At 2:47 in the morning, in the hospital break room that still smelled of disinfectant, I opened my phone and saw that I was being laughed at in my own family group chat. My father had just posted a photo of me from Thanksgiving night. The image of me holding the DNA kit in my hand. He chose the exact angle where I was looking down, my eyes appearing uncertain, not unflattering, not blurry, just enough to make me look small. His caption was short. I suspect she belongs to someone else. Then, another line, light as a joke. Maybe the mailman delivered more than letters back then. I read it twice. It was not clever, but it was effective. Right below it, my brother dropped a rolling laughter emoji. Then another one. Then a few relatives chimed in. Rick never misses. Looks like a TV episode. Just testing for fun. No one asked why. No one said, stop. No one said that was his daughter. There was only laughter, and my name in the center of the screen. That Thanksgiving, the Mitchell house was set the way wealthy families who love ceremony set a table. A long white tablecloth, the turkey placed at the center like a focal point, wine glasses filled, conversation even and measured. I sat near the kitchen door, beside the extra serving trays, the convenient seat for standing up to refill bread, gravy, napkins. In other words, the seat of the person always ready to serve. I was used to that role. My father sat at the head of the table, back straight, raising a toast like every year, speaking about family, tradition, gratitude. Garrett sat across from me, relaxed, confident, as if everything in that house had always belonged to him. My mother smiled softly, but her eyes never lingered on anyone for more than a second. I ate slowly, listening more than I spoke, as usual. When the laughter around the table had just faded, my father set his knife down very gently. He leaned down, took out a small white and blue box, and slid it across the table. The box passed the bowl of mashed potatoes, lightly tapped my water glass, and stopped in front of me. A DNA test kit. He leaned back and took a sip of wine. Since the whole family is here, he said, his tone light as if he were joking. Let's test it for fun. A few people laughed first. Then he looked straight at me. Let's see if you're actually my daughter. Garrett immediately slapped his hand in approval. Savage, Dad. The whole table burst into laughter. Not loud, not crude. Just the neat laughter of people who knew they were standing on the safe side. My uncle shook his head. Rick always has a sense of humor, an aunt added. It's just a test, no big deal. No one looked at me for long. They were waiting for a reaction. I glanced at my mother. She was gripping her wine glass so tightly her knuckles had turned white, her face drained of color. Rick, she said quietly. She's grown, my father replied, his eyes still on me. A little joke won't hurt. The room fell into that kind of silence that waits. I picked up the box. It was light, small, harmless enough to almost be funny. Garrett leaned forward. If she's not, we can just change her last name. Another round of laughter followed. I placed the box neatly in front of me. Okay. Just one word. No shaking. No raised voice. The laughter stopped quickly. And for the first time that night, my father was no longer certain he was controlling the story. Garrett kept laughing for a few seconds longer, but no one joined him. The conversation shifted to football, to housing prices, to business. Dinner moved on as if nothing had happened. I finished my meal, stood up to clear the plates out of habit, and received a few polite comments about how Caroline is always so considerate. I nodded and smiled just enough. When I got home, I set the kit on the kitchen counter. I did not think about it for long. I followed the instructions and mailed the sample, not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted a number to answer for me. 3 weeks later, the results came back. White paper, black ink, a figure precise to 4 decimal places. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Richard Mitchell is my biological father. No emotion, no commentary, just data. I did not call ahead. I did not warn anyone. I scanned the results and sent them to everyone who had laughed that night. 25 email addresses, the same content, no added explanation, no accusations, just the attachment and one short line, per Thanksgiving's request. I did not track who opened it first or who read it last. I did not need to know what they said to each other in the family group chat. I only knew that this time, that room would have to read what I placed on the table. Not a joke. Not a hint. Black ink on white paper. My father did not hate me. He erased me. Not loudly. Not with shouting. Not by throwing me out. He erased me the way someone deletes a line from a spreadsheet, quietly, logically, without leaving an obvious trace. In the Mitchell house, everything had structure. Family photos hung straight, financial files organized by year, seats assigned and fixed. And within that structure, I was always slightly off. The whole family blonde, light-eyed, the kind of genes that looked unmistakably related. I had auburn hair, just different enough to draw a second glance, followed by a smile and a comment about my mother's side. A typo in a perfect printout. No one ever said I did not belong. They just behaved as if I needed verification. At 8 years old, I made a Father's Day card. Blue paper, a crooked heart glued on because I had not cut it straight. I wrote in marker, my handwriting still uneven. "I love you, Dad." I stood beside his desk when I handed it to him. He looked at it, paused for a beat, then tore it in half in front of me. Not angrily, just a clean, decisive motion. He said not to bring sentimental things into his office. My mother said nothing. But that night she placed the taped-together card in the drawer of my room. At 14, Garrett enrolled in a prestigious private school. Custom-tailored uniforms, a car service, a celebration held in the living room. I continued at the public school near our house. When I asked why, my father said, "You invest in the highest potential." He said it the way someone talks about stocks. I understood. I was not the high return. I walked to school every morning, filled out my own applications, found my own extracurriculars. At home, the leather armchair engraved with GM sat in my father's office by the window. GM stood for Garrett Mitchell. That chair was never meant for me. It was the clearest symbol of what they called the golden sun. At 18, I was valedictorian. I practiced my speech all week, rewrote it 3 times to fit the time limit. I looked down at the parents section on graduation day and did not see my father. He was at home hosting a barbecue for Garrett because he had just signed his first internship contract. My mother sat in the last row, smiling at me through a thin layer of tears. She texted me a short message, "Congratulations," then deleted it before adding anything more. After the ceremony, I drove myself home, changed out of my graduation gown, and stood by the grill flipping meat like a server at my own family's celebration. My father patted my shoulder and said, "Good job," then turned to discuss Garrett's starting salary. At 22, my tuition was cut in the middle of the semester. No warning. My father said he could not continue funding an uncertain direction. I borrowed $47,000. I signed the loan papers with a slightly trembling hand but a clear mind. I worked 2 jobs, studied at night, paid the interest on time. At home, the GM chair was still there, the leather shinier with age. I never once tried to sit in it, not because I was forbidden, just because I understood my place. For 20 years, there was never a major argument, just small adjustments. My seat near the kitchen, my name not included in succession plans, toasts that emphasized family tradition without ever mentioning me. My father never said I was not his daughter. He just looked at me like a project that required further evaluation. Garrett was assumed to be the future. I was the variable. I did not rebel. I did not leave home. I finished everything I started. Good grades, stable job, bills paid on time. I stayed quiet long enough for the silence to become the foundation of this family. There were dinners where I listened to people compare my hair color to some distant relative as a way to rationalize it. I smiled. I was used to being placed in parentheses. The chair engraved with GM was always there. Every time I walked past my father's office, I saw it as a reminder. Not that I was hated, just that I was not at the center of the equation. My father did not need to push me out. He only needed not to choose me. And then came that Thanksgiving, when the DNA kit was slid across the table like a public joke, and I understood this was not a sudden impulse. It was the result of 20 years of being subtracted, piece by piece. He was no longer just doubting in silence, He placed that doubt in the middle of the table, in front of 25 people, like a performance. I said okay. I sent the sample. 3 weeks later, I sent the results to all of them. But that night did not end at the dinner table. After everyone left, my father continued. He turned me into a joke in the family group chat. At 2:47 in the morning, I was sitting in the ICU break room after a code that had lasted more than 3 hours. The fluorescent lights were cold and white, the smell of stale coffee mixed with disinfectant. I took off my gloves, washed my hands longer than usual, then sat down in the plastic chair against the wall. My phone vibrated lightly in my scrub pocket. I thought it was a notification about the next shift. I opened it. The family group chat, 42 people. The name was still Family First. I checked the timestamps. They had started at 11 p.m. And they were still going. My father had posted a photo of me from Thanksgiving night, the moment I was holding the DNA kit in my hand. The picture was not blurry, not unflattering, just taken from the exact angle where I was looking down, appearing uncertain. His caption was insulting but polished enough to pass as humor. I suspect she belongs to someone else. Something about the mailman delivering more than letters. I read it twice. It was not clever, but it was effective. Right below it, Garrett dropped a rolling laughter emoji. Then another one. Then a few relatives chimed in, laughing, posting GIFs. Someone said that was hilarious. Someone else said this looked like the next TV drama. No one asked why. No one said stop. I scrolled up, message after message. They were analyzing my hair color as if it were legal evidence. They repeated old jokes about strange genes in the family. Someone sent a photo of a red-haired actress. Someone tagged my mother. She did not respond. Her silence sat between the messages like an empty space no one touched. I noticed that detail. In a group of 42 people, silence is also data. I did not reply. I did not drop an emoji. I did not leave the group. I started taking screenshots. Every section, every emoji, every timestamp, even the messages that had been deleted. I captured the silence of the people who usually talked the most, but said nothing that night. I saved everything into a separate folder. The folder was named November, Neutral. I sat there a few more minutes, listening to the faint beep of heart monitors in the room next door. I did not feel explosive anger. I felt clarity. The feeling was familiar. The only difference was that this time it had timestamps and digital evidence. I wondered what they thought when they posted publicly like that. Maybe they believed it was still an inside joke. Maybe they assumed I would react emotionally. I did not. Dana walked into the break room around 3 a.m. She had just finished her shift, her hair tied back, faint marks from gloves still on her hands. She looked at me and asked if I was okay. I handed her the phone. She read, said nothing for a few seconds, then set the phone down and said one short sentence. Get the data. Let the data speak. No slogans, no long reassurance. Just that. I nodded. I understood her. The DNA kit was a reaction. It could answer a single question. But what was happening in that group chat was not just personal doubt. It was a collective narrative being built. And if that narrative continued, I would need something that held weight in a courtroom. Not screenshots. Not back-and-forth arguments. Something recognized when people sit around a conference table and no longer use emojis. I looked back at my phone. The messages kept coming. Garrett added another line. Who needs Maury when you have Thanksgiving? A few people laughed. An older relative posted a laughing face as if trying to keep things light. No one defended me. No one said enough. I took another screenshot. Saved it. 3:12 a.m. I locked the screen. I stood up and poured the cold coffee down the sink. In the ICU, everything is documented. Time in, time out. Medication given. Exact dosage. I am used to letting data determine the next step. I thought about that as I walked back into the hallway. On Thanksgiving night, they laughed around the table. By early morning, they were laughing together on a screen. No one imagined those messages could become part of a record. I said nothing in the group chat. I did not announce that I was taking screenshots. I simply saved them. I understood something very clearly as I sat in that ICU break room at 2:47 in the morning. The kit was not enough. If I wanted this story to end in a way no one could reverse, I needed something that could stand in front of the law. I needed numbers, signatures, notarization, and this time, I would not answer with emotion alone. That night I sat alone in the kitchen, opened the kit box, and knew I had to do this differently. An online kit was enough to start an argument, but not enough to close a story. I did not need a symbolic answer. I needed something that would hold up in court. I opened my laptop and searched for an accredited lab with a clear chain of custody process, a place where every sample is documented from collection to analysis, where no one could say it was just a family experiment. I scheduled the appointment, filled in the information completely, read every term carefully. I am used to reading documents closely, especially when my name is on them. The day my sample was collected felt routine, like a standard medical appointment. I sat in a bright white room. A technician in gloves handed me a cheek swab. I followed the instructions, rotating it inside my cheek for the required number of seconds. The sample was placed into a tube, sealed in front of me, labeled, signed. I watched as they recorded the time, the case number, the signatures. Everything left a trail. I did not feel nervous. I felt like I was doing something necessary. My father's sample did not come from a conversation. After Thanksgiving dinner, he left behind an embroidered handkerchief, the kind he usually keeps in his jacket pocket. I noticed it while clearing the table. I picked it up, folded it carefully, set it aside, not because I had planned it in advance, only because I understood that opportunity does not come twice. I contacted the lab again and asked about obtaining a sample from a personal item. They explained the procedure, the packaging requirements, the preservation steps. I followed each instruction precisely. The handkerchief was placed in a designated evidence bag, sealed, labeled according to protocol. I signed my name. Everything was sent through a tracked delivery service. There was no drama, only procedure. During the days I waited for the results, I posted nothing else. Did not reply in the group chat. Did not argue. I went to work as usual, clocked into my shifts, documented patient charts, signed each line the way I always do. I realized what I felt was not revenge. It felt more like self-preservation, not saving myself from a person, but from a story that had been told about me for too long. I did not want a loud reaction. I wanted a number no one could mock with an emoji. I thought often about the GM chair in my father's office. I used to see it as a symbol of exclusion. Now I saw it as a detail in a file. Everything becomes a detail when placed under the right light. I did not tell Dana every step I took. She only asked if I had scheduled the lab. I said yes. She nodded. That was enough. I knew obtaining a sample from the handkerchief could be seen as cold. Maybe it was, but cold does not mean wrong. It only means I am no longer waiting for permission to protect myself. I did not need confrontation. I needed data. Those days moved slowly. Emails still came from the group chat, fewer than before, but still there. Some people tried to keep joking. Some stayed silent. I did not open all of them. I waited for the notification from the lab. I waited for a PDF with an official logo and a digital signature. And while I was waiting for the results, my father sent an email. Not to the group chat. Directly to me. The message was short, but clear enough to show that he no longer saw this as a family joke. He mentioned lawyers. He referenced legal consequences if I continued spreading information that damaged his reputation. When I read that email, I understood the story had moved to another level, and I knew I had been right to choose a notarized path instead of arguing across a screen. My father sent the email on a weekday afternoon. No elaborate subject line, just one short sentence and an attachment. He CC'd me directly, as if to make sure I saw every word clearly. No small talk. No private conversation. The content was cold and precise. The will would leave all assets to biological children. The official reading would take place at the attorney's office on the scheduled date. The two words were written clearly, as if underlined without actually being underlined. I understood his intent. He wanted me to know I was excluded. At least, that was what he believed. I read the email again. Then a third time. I did not react immediately. I enlarged the attachment and skimmed through the clauses. Legal language is dry, but it is not vague. If I am his biological daughter, That clause does not exclude me, it protects me. The issue was not the wording. The issue was the assumption my family had carried for 20 years. I set the laptop down on the table and sat still for a few minutes. There was a very clear moment in my mind when the pieces shifted on their own. If the lab results confirm I am his biological child, then the phrase biological children is not a barrier. It is a key. For 20 years, he did not need proof. He only needed a reason to place me near the kitchen and Garrett near the window. A test could have disrupted that arrangement, so he never took one. And if anyone should be worried about that phrase, it might not be me. I did not smile. I did not feel victorious. I saw logic. I reopened the test results and looked at the percentage again. I did not forward it to my father. I did not reply to the email. I closed my computer, put on my jacket, and went to work as usual. That night's shift was heavy. A young boy needed emergency intubation. I washed my hands, put on gloves, followed each step the way I have done hundreds of times. Keep the head aligned. Check the airway. Confirm placement. The monitor beeped steadily. In moments like that, my mind works clearly. There is no room for emotion, no room for speculation, only procedure. I realized I was applying the same principle to my family. Verify the data. Place it correctly. Do not let noise override facts. Mid-shift, my phone vibrated a few more times. I did not open it right away. I knew the content would not change the wording of the will. I finished my work first. When I returned to the break room, I read my father's email once more. His tone was not angry, not threatening, just certain. He believed the clause biological children was an exclusion. He wanted me to see that I no longer had a place in that structure, but I no longer viewed things through that old structure. I thought about Garrett. I thought about the times my father emphasized genes. I thought about the chair engraved with GM in his office. I did not reach a conclusion. I only recognized that the clause he relied on might not be pointing at the person he thought. I went home after my shift, set my bag on the kitchen table, poured a glass of water. I opened the email again and read the date and location carefully. The familiar law office, the clearly scheduled day. He had prepared everything like a final move. I sat there, watching the screen go dark after a few minutes of not touching it. I did not call my mother. I did not text Garrett. I did not open the group chat. I opened my contacts and searched for a lawyer's number. The law office was in an old 3-story building. The elevator made a soft sound when it stopped on the second floor. No polished glass, no illuminated logo. Just a small nameplate mounted beside the door. Inside, the walls were lined with bookshelves, thick volumes of law arranged by year. It was not loud, no large screens. Here, words mattered less than documents. I liked that. Margaret Foley shook my hand with a firm, brief grip. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not tell me how strong I had been. She invited me to sit in a leather chair worn at the armrests, opened her notebook, set her pen down as if signaling the start. I took each item out of my bag. The notarized DNA results. The email with the will. The phrase, biological children bold in my mind, even if not bold on paper. Screenshots of the 42-person group chat. Every emoji, every timestamp. Margaret read each page carefully. She did not react with large expressions. She asked a few short questions. Which lab issued these results? Is there a documented chain of custody? Does this email include the original attachment? I answered each one. I am used to presenting data in sequence. When she finished reading, she closed the documents and rested her hand on the stack. She said the new will my father sent by email might only be a draft. If it had not been properly signed, if it lacked valid witnesses, then the prior will would still stand. She said it like stating an ordinary rule. What she emphasized was not winning or losing. She emphasized timing, proper documentation, proper placement, not sent through email, not argued in a group chat. It must be placed in front of the attorney during the official reading. I listened and nodded. I did not ask what my odds of winning were. I asked what needed to be prepared. Margaret listed each step. Notarize multiple copies of the results. Prepare backup copies. Bring printed versions of the email. Do not announce it. Do not warn them. Let the documents speak. We assembled a thick, orderly envelope. Inside were the notarized DNA results, the printed email, the group chat screenshots, arranged in logical order. Margaret asked me to sign several pages. I signed, my handwriting straight and steady. She stamped each copy. The sound of the seal pressing into paper was dry and firm. I realized I was preparing not for a confrontation, but for a file. Before I left the office, Margaret looked at me and spoke briefly. Do not argue. Do not explain. Just place the envelope down. If they talk, let them talk. You do not need to compete for words. I remembered that. That evening, I stopped by a store and bought a new outfit. Not a party dress, a meeting suit. A blazer that fit my shoulders, dark pants, low heels. When I tried it on, I looked at myself in the mirror and did not see someone excluded from a will. I saw someone preparing to enter a conference room. Dana laughed when she saw me in it. She said I looked like I was negotiating a contract. I told her it was close enough. Dana rehearsed with me one last time. She played Garrett, throwing out sarcastic remarks. I did not react. She played my father, asking if I intended to make this bigger than it needed to be. I did not explain. I simply placed the envelope on the kitchen table as if it were the conference table. Dana nodded. Exactly. Let the documents speak. In the days before the reading, I sent no additional emails. I did not repeat the results. I worked as usual, but in my mind, every step was arranged. I knew where I would sit. I knew where I would place the envelope on the table. I did not prepare a speech. I prepared a file. On the day of the will reading, I arrived 13 minutes early. I wanted to be seated before they walked in. The conference room at the law office smelled of old carpet mixed with polished wood, the kind of smell that makes people lower their voices without thinking. A long, dark wood table, leather chairs lined evenly on both sides. Anyone who walked in seemed to already have a role assigned. I arrived 13 minutes early, took a seat near the middle of the table, not too close to the head but close enough to see everyone clearly. I placed my bag beside me, rested both hands on the table, breathed evenly. As each person entered, no one looked surprised to see me there, but no one greeted me either. The inner circle of the family was fully present, the closest relatives, always invited into every major decision. Garrett arrived with his wife and son, his suit tailored, a slight smile as if this were just another annual meeting. He glanced at me briefly, said nothing, then pulled out a chair and sat down. My mother sat beside my father, her eyes already red, as if she had been crying or had not slept. She did not look at me for long. My father entered last, slowly, carrying a thin folder and his familiar confidence. He looked me up and down and said his first sentence immediately. Surprised you had the nerve to show up. He did not raise his voice, just loud enough for the entire table to hear. A few people smiled lightly, the polite smile people give when someone in power says something they consider reasonable. The family attorney began reading the will. His tone was steady, neutral, each clause delivered as if it were a document without emotion. When he reached the main provision, he clearly read the phrase, assets to biological children. I heard the way my father exhaled softly, like a period at the end of a sentence. He straightened in his chair, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. Not a broad smile, just the expression of someone who believes he has sealed a victory. Garrett looked down at the table, then up at my father, confidence in his eyes. The room was silent. No one objected. No one asked a question. No one turned to see how I would respond. Perhaps they believed my part had ended before it began. The attorney closed the folder and asked if anyone objected. The question sounded like a required formality, not a genuine invitation. I looked around the table once. No one moved. No one spoke. My father kept the thin smile. Garrett leaned back in his chair. My mother stared at her hands. I stood up. The leather chair made a soft sound as I pushed it back. I said, I object. My voice was not loud, not shaking, just clear enough. The entire room turned toward me at once. My father frowned. Garrett leaned forward slightly. The family attorney asked again, Do you object to the substance or the procedure? I answered, The procedure. I walked to the conference room door. My hand touched the cool metal handle. I opened it. The hallway outside was slightly brighter than the room, and I said, "Please come in." My attorney stepped inside. The envelope had been in my hands the entire meeting. It felt weightless. The papers inside were not thick. But when I set it down on the dark wood table, that small sound made the whole room heavier. I slid the envelope toward Margaret. She opened it, pulled out each document, arranged them neatly in front of her. No one spoke. Garrett was still half standing from the moment my attorney walked in. My father had not fully sat back down. He looked at the envelope as if it were just one last dramatic gesture. Margaret began to read. Her voice was even, neither high nor low. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Caroline is the biological daughter of Richard. She read the full names, the sample numbers, the date of collection, the date of analysis. I heard every number clearly. No one interrupted. No one laughed. The phrase biological daughter echoed this time from someone other than my father. My father looked down at the table. I saw his lips move, but no sentence formed. He flipped quickly through a few pages in his own folder, as if searching for a typographical error. There was none. Garrett stood up fully from his chair. He said, "That is not possible." His voice was slightly higher than usual. His wife placed a hand on his arm, but he shook it off lightly. Margaret did not look at Garrett for long. She turned to the next page, pointed to the certification that the lab met required standards, that the chain of custody procedure was documented step by step. My sample was collected, sealed, labeled. My father's sample was collected and processed according to proper procedure. Valid notarization, complete signatures. She stated everything in the tone of someone accustomed to being questioned. She did not argue. She presented. Garrett said again, "I do not believe it." Margaret replied, "Belief does not alter the legal validity of this document. If you wish to request a retest, it must be conducted under equivalent or stricter legal procedures." The room was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning above the ceiling. The inner circle no longer smiled. One relative cleared his throat softly, then stopped. Margaret closed the folder, but did not set it down yet. She added one more sentence. Before requesting a retest of one child, you may want to consider testing all children. She did not raise her voice. She did not emphasize it, but it sat there, clear as an underline. I did not look at Garrett right away. I looked at my father. My mother began to cry. Not loudly, just tears slipping down as she covered her mouth with her hand. She looked at my father, then at Garrett. I saw confusion on her face, as if she were trying to calculate something she had not yet caught up to. My father turned and looked at Garrett. That look I had known for 20 years, the look of suspicion, the look of a man measuring bloodline by instinct rather than by paper. I realized the shift did not happen with an explosion, but with the direction of a gaze. No one said anything more for several long seconds. But the roles in the room had moved. Garrett stepped back, then sat down. He spoke more quietly. "We can redo the test." Margaret replied, "Absolutely, under proper legal procedure." She placed my results in the center of the table, beside the will that contained the phrase, "biological children." The two documents lay next to each other, not touching, but close enough to compare. I remained standing. I did not say anything else. I did not need to repeat the words biological children. I did not need to ask if anyone wanted to reread the email. I simply stood there, looking at the empty envelope on the table. It was as light as it had been at the beginning, but the room was no longer light at all. All my life I was used to my mother's silence. She was silent when I was questioned. She was silent when my father joked about me in front of relatives. She was silent for 20 years, as if the stability of the family depended on no one saying anything further. But in that room, between the dark wood table and the tailored suits, she spoke for the first time. And when she did, the family collapsed in a very quiet way. My mother did not stand up. She remained seated beside my father, her hands clasped tightly together. Her voice was not loud. She said she had something to say that she should have said a long time ago. No one interrupted. No one laughed. No one breathed too loudly. The room still carried the scent of old carpet and polished wood, but the air had shifted. She said that back then, many years ago, there had been a time when she had an affair. The man was Greg Nolan. His name landed on the table like a stone. No one in the room was unfamiliar with that name. Greg Nolan had worked at the same company, had shared projects, had attended year-end parties. Not a stranger from the street. Not an anonymous name. An old acquaintance within a circle close enough that everyone knew him. I looked at the clock on the wall, not because I needed the time, but because I needed a fixed point to focus on. My mother continued. She did not offer many details, only the time frame. That time frame overlapped with when Garrett was born. She did not need to say anything more. The people in the room were smart enough to calculate. Garrett stood up again, but this time he did not say that is impossible like before. He said this cannot be true, then stepped back, his chair tipping slightly behind him. His wife called his name, but he had already turned and walked quickly toward the door. The door closed, not too hard, but enough to make everyone flinch. No one followed immediately. I remained standing where I was. I did not speak when my mother began. I did not interrupt when Garrett left the room. I looked at my mother, and for the first time I saw her not avoiding my eyes. She said she had been silent for too long. Not to protect me, but to protect what she believed was the family. My father's attorney placed his hand on the folder in front of him. He said the reading needed to be paused. His tone was professional rather than emotional. With new information like this, all procedures would need to be reviewed. He proposed an adjournment. No one objected. No one was certain enough to object. I spoke, not loudly, just clearly enough for the room to hear. I said I did not come here to take money. I came to correct the record of the truth. The sentence was not meant to polish my image. I simply wanted to put the right thing in the right place. A will can be argued, assets can be divided, but the truth has only one version. No one responded to me with sharp words. The inner circle sat still. Some looked down at the table. Some looked at my mother. My father did not speak for several minutes after that. He stared at the empty space in front of him where the two files had just lain side by side. Mine, his. The meeting ended without anyone pounding the table, without a winner or a loser. People left the room in small groups. I gathered my empty envelope and placed it back into my bag. Margaret gave me a slight nod before stepping into the hallway. She did not say we did well. She only said we would wait for the next step. Afterward, my father remained seated alone in the conference room. I stood at the doorway for a moment, unsure whether I should go back in. In the end, I stepped inside. He did not look at me right away. He asked one question, not to humiliate me. He asked, "When did you know?" I do not need the 4,000 square foot house with high ceilings and a spiral staircase. I do not need leather chairs with names assigned to each person. I need a correction, delivered to the same place where they once laughed. After that meeting, everything moved into procedure. The attorney made it clear, the new will my father sent by email had not been properly signed, did not have valid witnesses, so the prior will remained in effect. In either direction, I was protected. If the old will applied, I was still an heir. If the biological children clause in the new draft were applied, the test results had already placed me in the correct position. I listened without excitement. Only order. I told my father the only thing I required. I did not demand a larger share. I did not negotiate percentages. I asked for a public apology, sent to the same list of people who witnessed Thanksgiving, the same 42-person group chat, the same internal family email list. Not a private conversation, not a handshake behind closed doors. A clear acknowledgement that I am his biological daughter, and that he was wrong to turn me into a joke. In the meantime, Garrett went and tested himself. No one forced him. No one suggested it. The results came back quickly. No ambiguous percentage. No high probability. A clean 0. Not the biological son of Richard. I took his call late one evening. For the first time in my life, I heard him without confidence in his voice. He said he did not know what to do. I did not say I had anticipated it. I just listened. Some truths do not require commentary. My mother came to my small apartment a few days later. Not the large house with the 2-story living room. Just a compact place, enough light, a dining table set by the window. She sat down, hands on her lap, and said she had used me as a shield to preserve her marriage. When my father suspected, she let the suspicion fall on me. She believed that if one child carried the question mark, the others would remain safe. I listened to all of it. I did not say I understood. I did not say I forgave her. I said I needed boundaries. I would not continue playing that role. If she wanted to remain in my life, then the truth had to be placed on the table first. My father sent the apology email over the weekend. I received it before the group chat began buzzing continuously. He wrote briefly, without deflection. He acknowledged that I am his biological daughter. He acknowledged that he was wrong to publicly question and humiliate me. He stated it clearly in front of everyone who had witnessed it, not a vague sentence, not blaming a misunderstanding. I read the email twice, then closed it. I did not need to save it. I only needed it to exist. After that, he said he intended to legally adopt Garrett, not to erase the truth, but to recognize the relationship that had existed. He said he would revise the will, divide it evenly. I did not object. I did not argue for more. When the attorney asked if I had any additional requests, I said my inheritance would be transferred into a nursing scholarship fund. I did not say that in a crowded conference room. I said it in the attorney's office, between tall shelves of books. I wanted that money to go where I understood it best. A month later, I invited a few people to my apartment. A small meal, home-cooked, not 16 dishes, no seating chart. A simple IKEA table, chairs without anyone's name engraved. No one sat higher than anyone else. Garrett came, quieter than before. My mother came, carrying a bottle of wine in hesitation. My father arrived last, standing at the door for a few seconds before stepping in. No one fought to speak first. No one needed to assert a position. We ate in a space that was just enough, the sound of knives touching plates not too loud. No hierarchy. No golden chair. The ones who stayed were there because they chose to stay. I looked around the table and did not see the old family as it had been. I saw people trying to relearn how to sit together without roles. The old family did not collapse because I spoke. It collapsed because the truth was finally read aloud. This story does not revolve around money, even though the number $3.2 million hung in the room like a countdown clock. It revolves around the way a family had grown used to breathing through silence, used to calling suspicion a standard, used to treating one person as wrong from the beginning so everything else could appear orderly. For 20 years, Caroline walked through dinners where toasts felt like thin blades, where comments were polite enough that no one appeared cruel, and precise enough that she knew exactly where she stood. She could have continued doing what she had always done. Smiling just enough, keeping the peace just enough, living inside a stable version that benefited everyone as long as no one asked questions. But at some point, a definition that has existed too long without ever being tested becomes a weakness of its own. Caroline did not bring a speech into that conference room, nor did she bring a need for sympathy. She brought an envelope, a notarized seal, and a steady breath. No one in that room was defeated by volume, only assumptions were placed on the table and forced to face black ink on white paper. When she said she did not come for money, she was not trying to appear noble. She was repositioning herself in the story, from the one being judged to the one entitled to process, from the one required to prove herself to the one holding the data. And when the data was read aloud, the room was forced to change the way it looked at her, not because anyone suddenly softened, but because there was no reasonable detour left. If you have ever been in a room where people assumed you were wrong, if you have ever been compared, doubted without being given a chance to speak, this story may resonate with you. Do you think Caroline was right to bring the truth in front of everyone, or should she have stayed silent to preserve the family? If you were in her position, what would you choose? Surface peace or a truth that could change everything? Share your thoughts in the comments. I would really like to know where you are watching this story from and where you believe the line stands between protecting a family and protecting yourself.